I spoke last month about a very important issue almost forgotten, the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, which went missing in 2014. Tony Abbott was the then Australian Prime Minister. He argued in 2020 that he had been told, quote, by the very top levels of the Malaysian government that from very, very early on they thought it was a murder-suicide by the pilot. It was crystal clear to me, said Tony Abbott, that they had a very clear understanding that this almost certainly was what happened, unquote. This prompted comments from one of the Malaysian government's most senior figures, Lim Kit Siang, to call for an international inquiry into the plane's disappearance. Well, nothing's happened. And the most important point for such an inquiry would be to answer the question, why did the Malaysian and the Australian governments persist with searching the wrong place and ignoring the murder-suicide theory? In 2020, in a documentary on all of this, the senior public servant Martin Dolan, the former Chief Commissioner of the Australian Transport Safety Bureau and the man in charge of the search for the Malaysian Airlines flight, admitted that the $200 million search for MH370 may have failed because he and the ATSB, the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, refused to accept that the flight's captain had hijacked his own aircraft. He conceded that new evidence increasingly proves that the ATSB's theory that the flight was unpiloted at the end was incorrect. Byron Bailey has written to me on any number of times, a former RAAF pilot who was senior captain with Emirates for 15 years. He's flown the same model, B777, as MH370. And the dominant opinion put by people like Byron Bailey and other commercial airline pilots who know this scene backwards is that MH370 was hijacked by its captain. Byron Bailey has said over and over again that a rogue pilot likely depressurised the aircraft to kill the passengers and crew through oxygen deprivation, while he alone in the cockpit had a much longer oxygen supply. Well, why am I going back to this issue? Well, the same Byron Bailey wrote to me last week with a very important point, and I quote Byron. Today we acknowledge the awful Bali Islamist bombing of 20 years ago, which killed 202 people. He said it's not a stretch of the imagination to regard the planned murder of 238 people by a politically active supporter of the Islamist politician Anwar Ibrahim as also a terror event, even though he planned to hide his evil deed deep in the southern Indian Ocean, unquote. Wrote Byron Bailey, I find it hard to believe that in a Western democracy, such an event could be covered up. Now, Byron Bailey is a veteran commercial pilot with more than 50 years experience, 26,000 flying hours, a former RAAF fighter pilot and trainer. He was a senior captain with Emirates for 15 years, during which he flew the same model Boeing 777 passenger jet as Malaysian Airlines MH370. He joins me tonight. Byron, thank you for your time. You've said a member of the MH370 search planning team has been an inside informant for you. What were you told?
Well, when I rang him back in 2014, he told me they had the deleted flight plan the FBI had supplied to them that the captain had done to the southern Indian Ocean. Now, why would a captain plan this? The Australian Transport Safety Bureau denied the existence of this flight plan. And it was only after the search was all over that when I bumped into him and said, this really was a crazy farce, he said, yes,